Hello everyone, welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host Liam, aka Hembar, and today I'm going to do a little bit of a different video. This is something that I was asked to do, and I had mentioned potentially doing at some point anyways, and that is just to give you an idea of where you can read my stuff. So I make a lot of videos on YouTube, but I also do some editing, not very much, copy editing, and I write some stuff. Again, not very much, but we'll see what I have. And so I just wanted to show you where you could read some of my stuff and support me as well. Um, Supporting me is just reading some of my stuff at this point. Most of it is free, so I should caveat that before you click away. But I thought you might want to know about some of it. So this is my website. You can go here if you want as well. It's Liam QD Hall. That's what I publish under is Liam QD Hall. So I have speculative lecture of prose and prosody. So here's my published writing actually. This first one, Oath to Work, was from 2020. It's actually a poem. This is the only scene and editor poem that I've had. It's rather short. This sends you to a page to download something. If it doesn't work, I mean, it should work. But if it doesn't, for whatever reason, just let me know. I can get it to you anyways. Then we have Path to the People, which was the first story I ever got paid for. This is cozy fantasy for those interested. It's really short. It's about 600 words probably. This is free to read online. This is from Wingraph. It's their flash fiction section. It is, how to say this? It is a story idea I had of combining The Hobbit and a story by David Wiley, actually. I made a whole video on it when it came out because I was pretty excited. It was my first published short story. And that was about a year ago. And yeah, so it just kind of combines those two elements. It's cozy, like it says. It's about a woman named Lou Kane. I had made up for some other stories a while ago. And then we have Knife and Spear. So I put this one up here because it is published. The people did look at it. I did not get paid for this one actually because it is fan fiction. Actually, I know some people don't like that. That's really what got me started on writing. I largely write short stories, if it wasn't already obvious. Short stories and poems are really my thing. I have not finished any novels ever. I have finished a novella. It's not currently published. I'm working on getting that published. But Knife and Spear here is fan fiction. It's rather short. I think it's about 1,800 words. And it is about, it's in the Weave in the Void world, hence why it's on their Patreon. They were nice enough to publish it on their Patreon. And it is about a boy and his sister, basically, trying to survive a monstrous attack. It's really short, like I said, playing around kind of with their names and this idea of the knife and spear, which are the weapons present in the story. And then we have Vacancy for Vengeance. I kind of just went for the alliteration there. If you notice, I like that already. This is also Wingraph, like Path to the People. This was one of their issues, was it 3 maybe, was preluded by 5 days of flash fiction because Wingraph doesn't actually do flash fiction anymore. So this led it off, first day of flash fiction back for that releasing of that new issue. Vacancy for Vengeance. This is actually kind of a send-off novel. This is a send-off for the first novel attempt I ever made, which I actually have over there. It's like in a diary, basically. The first novel I ever tried to write when I was in 8th grade. My main character in that was Eric. I switched it to Erica here, I believe. And it's kind of just a send-off because I'm never going to finish that novel. It would not have been good. But kind of just a send-off to my younger self and my writing that I wanted to do when I was younger. So that's free to read as well. It's like 700 words, rather short. And then we have Amidst the Sleeping Castle. This is even shorter. It's 400 words. This is in Whetstone's flash fiction thing. Again, free to read. This one is much different than the other ones. It's rather dark. I would potentially compare it more so to like Clark Ashton Smith in style, maybe Chase Fulmar as well. The idea was to costume villains rather than to give them a monologue to get an idea of what a villain was. And so Miss Sleeping Castle, really short. This is the story I've had the most feedback on. When I shared it, people actually told me what they liked about it. And so I'm really proud of the story. Like I said, it's really short. I'm definitely using a different vocabulary here compared to, say, these cozy fantasy stories, which are pretty straightforward, or that fan fiction piece. And then we have Amaranth and Amphitheater. This is about a character of mine, again, sword and sorcery, science fantasy setting. It kind of uses a gimmick of like the character is dying and she's recounting her death to you. Um, that I took from a few different places, um, which I made a video on as well. Actually, this is an anthology. This one is not free. It might be available through Kindle Unlimited stuff, but this is my first physical release I've been in. Which came out in the middle of May of this year, and it's rather short as well. It's about 10 pages, about 2,500 words, I believe. Um, it's told in first person. There is a reference to Sun Eater for Sun Eater fans in there, and it is again something I thought was fun to write. Hopefully, anyone else would enjoy it. There's other great stories in that anthology, Half Human Heroes, edited by Jeremy Fee. Mine is firmly in Sword and Sorcery. There's a couple others maybe you could say are too. And then that's my published stuff. Now I do have one other story. I should keep this shorter. I have one other story that has been accepted for publication. I'm working on getting more, of course. That one other story was a story that will appear in Starward Shadows. That is my story. Oh my goodness, Judgment of Thieves. Judgment of Thieves. Sorry, it's been a minute. That's my story featuring my favorite character, Arian. I have a really hard time getting Arian stories published. They're just kind of weird and out there. The main inspiration would be Book of the New Sun, a little bit of Sun Eater, more so Book of the New Sun more than anything. A little bit of maybe Michael Moorcock as well. So, but yeah, so that should be coming out hopefully sooner rather than later. That story got accepted for publication in February. I don't know when it's coming out. I wish I had a better idea. But then I also have a Patreon. So if you want to support my Patreon, you can read everything on my Patreon for $5 a month. Some of these stories are free as well. So like Flicker of the Salamander, the first one actually. If you want an idea of my short stories, again, the ones above are free. If you want an idea of what I try to get on my Patreon, Flicker of the Salamander is free. This is very different from what I normally write. It is kind of an experiment for me. It's told in two parts. It's really short. If you haven't noticed, I really like not just short stories. I generally like to keep them closer to flash fiction almost than even something like novelettes. So I have written some of those as well, though. None are published as of now. And then so Flicker the Salamander, kind of about a salamander, right? Like this fire spirit. It kind of goes more for an epic feel, but it's really short. About a girl as well. In Search of Honor is one of my first stories with my character Ethanar. I have another story, only one other story about him that I'm kind of shopping out. This story was just like a character piece I wrote when I was figuring out this character. It's really short, so I put it on my Patreon. I was like, there's like no chance this is gonna get published. It feels like a very, very short prologue. And then we have Afterward, which is kind of a really weird, far future, kind of a big idea, sci-fi. It's really my only sci-fi that you could like strictly say is sci-fi, at least besides the science fantasy stuff that's published, at least. I can't remember if I have what. Some of these are not only some are public, some are in my $1 tier, and then some are there's the reader tier, which is $5. So Afterward, though, it is very how I say this, kind of Vancian maybe, or Liberian, his like some of his sci-fi stuff. Then I have Hefty Burden, which is a little longer. Actually, I published this one in 2 parts on my Patreon, and this one is about a paladin going in to the swamp to serve his family, so to speak. This is kind of an experiment as well for me. One of my earlier works. I did rework it at some point, but I kind of felt like maybe it just wasn't worth trying to shop more to try to get published. What I'm likely to put more on my Patreon stories are stuff like Afterward and Flicker the Salamander, which are stuff I kind of just like vomited it out, and then In Search of Honor and Hefty Burden, which are more older stuff that I've looked through and whatnot. But I like poems a lot. You can come in here and tell me if I'm good at poetry or not. Some sonnets I've had that I particularly liked. Obviously, there's more that aren't up there, at least not as of right now. I have this one. If you can tell me what these names are, Haru and Wodanaz, what we would call them, at least in general English, I'll give you a cookie. Not really, I don't have a cookie. And Surreal is actually one of my favorite ones. It's follows a different meter. It's short, it's pithy. Time, Portal, I wrote those around the same time. Hell Ruins Hearth, one of my earlier ones. Weird is kind of like surreal. And then Elegy for the Saga of Leucemia is actually a sonnet. I have one other poem actually on my Patreon as well. If you know what Saga of Leucemia is, then maybe go read this elegy. And then I have some nonfiction as well. So I have one review up on Spiral Tower Press. They kind of follow the LARB format, which is LA Review of Books. So that is up. I have a video also on my channel for that book, but this came out several months before that. I'm hoping to have another review up actually with Spiral Tower Press at some time. But I'm also a columnist for a newspaper. And so you can read my first two columns here. Here Be Monsters, which is from May, and Dreaming of the Future, which is from July. It's just recently gone up. I mentioned basically 3 books that are new or coming out soon. I believe all the books in Here Be Monsters are out now. Dreaming of the Future, one of the 3 are out. The second one, I think, releases in a week or so, though. So kind of gives you an idea on some new science fiction for the second one, really, in particular, science fiction fantasy, though in general. And then I just kind of talk about themes in the newspaper. So yeah, I'll have more nonfiction at some point. Of course, I have a seminar essay I wrote that I'm really kind of proud of. I'd like to potentially get published at some point, maybe. That is about philology and romantic nationalism. But I'm not sure if anyone here is interested in that. This is going on a little longer than I'd like. But again, if you want to support me, the Patreon is really the direct way. I don't actually make any money from Half Human Heroes, besides the money I made when I sold the story. I don't get any royalties for that, at least. So, but you can go and read it, and that's really supporting me. And just even leaving like a comment here would be appreciated, because that's the thing with a lot of my writing is I don't get a lot of feedback. So generally, when you shop out stories, you generally just get a rejection that doesn't tell you anything about the story. And sometimes when you do get information about why they rejected you, like in particular, sometimes it's not very useful. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. So more feedback is always good. Most feedback I feel like I've had on stories are stories that are not published. And I'm still having a hard time getting published. But anyways, that's just the video for this week, where you can read my stuff. Again, hoping to have more stuff in the future, especially with that novella that's finished. I'll probably self-publish that. Again, I have a lot of other short stories that have been written, and hopefully I'll get those out as I can. Maybe I just write too weird stuff that people just don't want to buy these days. So, and that's fine. If eventually they don't sell, then I'll probably put them out on the Patreon as well. So I'm thinking about putting one of my older stories out on the Patreon here soon too. That is a novelette that will probably go up in like 4 parts even. So potentially. Anyways, so maybe keep an eye out there. Anyways, Liam from Liam's Lyceum. If you have any questions, let me know. I will catch you next time.